We're going to do 6 rows of the lace section. So I'll just mark those as completed. And we're going to start on the lace section. And before we do that, I'll just show you what this garter section has done for us. We've got, actually this is the, let's look at it on this side. This is the right side of our work. We've got these two nice ridges that came from knitting on the wrong side. And we're all set up to do our lace section. And the lace section is the same piece of the pattern that is in another tutorial that I did on a pattern called the Sweet November Shawl. And you can look that up in my videos if you'd like a little bit of a more time doing this lace stitch. But hopefully this will be enough to teach it to you here. Alright, so for the lace stitch, what we're going to be doing, again, it's going to be a 2-row repeat. And just like in the other sections, in the lace section, we're still going to be knitting the first 2 and knitting the last 2 on both the row 1 and the row 2, right side and wrong side. And we're still going to have our yarn over increases on the 3rd stitch and the 3rd to last stitch, and we're also going to have those yarn overs. This is on right side rows, or row 1s. We're also going to have those yarn overs before the 1st stitch marker and after the 2nd stitch marker. So, and then on the first half of your right side row we're going to be using the slip, slip, knit combined with the yarn over to make the lace. I'm going to show that to you in a moment. And then on the left side of the center stitch, we're going to be utilizing knit 2 together and yarn over. Just slightly different, but it makes it so that each side looks symmetrical. Okay, so let's start. And the way that we begin, as always, is with knit 2. Knit 1, knit 2. We do a yarn over and we do a knit 1. And then we do another yarn over. And then from here on out, we're going to do something called slip, slip, knit, and then follow that by a yarn over all the way up to the stitch marker. So for the slip, slip, knit, what we do is we slip knitwise the first stitch. So we put our needle in the front part of the stitch and we slip it over to our working needle. And then we slip second stitch over to our working needle. Then what we do is we take our holding needle and we put it into the front of those loops so that it looks like this. And then bring our yarn around and we're going to knit those two together. And I just kind of pull that a little bit to pull it through to make the stitch so it's not so tight. Okay, now since we just knitted those two together, we need to do a corresponding yarn over so that we don't lose a stitch as we go along. And these yarn overs, that occur are going to create the open work of this lace section. So again, we're going to slip, slip, knit the next 2 stitches. So we go in the front as if we're knitting, slip, slip, and then we take the holding needle, go into both of those stitches through the front, take our yarn, bring it around the back, and we're going to knit those 2 together and slide them off. And again, we want to do a yarn over to keep us from losing a stitch, and we're going to repeat that again. Slip, slip, put the holding needle through the front of those 2 stitches, and then we're going to knit those together. And another yarn over. We're going to do this all the way to the stitch marker. Okay, now something you should be watching for as you're, actually, that's going to come in the next row. Let's just keep going. So we're going to okay, so now we are at our center stitch, and we're going to knit that. Slip our marker. Now we're on the left-hand side of our center stitch, doing a right side row, row 1 of our lace pattern. And on this side, we are going to do something called knit 2 together, and then combine that with a yarn over, again, so that we don't lose our stitches. So since we're on a right-hand row, a right side row, we're going to do our yarn over, because we always do those 4 increases in the same spots. So now we're going to take our next 2 stitches, and we're going to work into the first one knitwise, and then also into the second one knitwise. Bring the yarn around, and we're going to knit those 2 together. Now, in order to keep from losing a stitch, we do a yarn over, and we're just going to keep repeating that knit 2 together and yarn over. And we're going to keep repeating that all the way to the 3rd to last stitch. Yarn over. Sometimes you have to hold the yarn a little bit in the back to get the needle in. You'll find the ways that work for you as you go along. If you start slow and build up your process, you'll get faster as you go. Yarn over. Sometimes on the first row of the lace, after the garter stitch, it can be a little tight. So when you're doing subsequent garter sections, try to keep those. Okay, so as I was saying, on garter stitch rows, try to make those stitches are a little looser, and it will make your lace pattern easier to start. All right, so we have 2 more, 1, 2 that we're going to do the knit 2 together, and then we're going to be on our 3rd to last stitch, and that's where we're going to do the same thing that we did at the other end. So we're knitting these 2 together, yarn over, okay, and then the 3rd to last stitch just gets knit, just a single knit on that one, and then we do a yarn over, and we just knit the last 2 stitches as we always do in every single row. That's always the same. Okay, so we just finished row 1 of the lace section. So we're going to put an X there. Now we're going to do row 2 of the lace section. And row 2 of the lace section is super easy. It is just purling across, except for the first 2 and last 2 stitches. So I'll just show you that. So we're going to start with knit 2, 1 and 2, and then we're just going to purl all the way across, slip our stitch marker, purl the center stitch, and then purl all the way across to the last 2 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll speed it up and get you all the way through that. Oop, we've got to move our yarn around to the front before we start purling. Here we go. Oh, and before we speed this up, there's something I do want to show you, and that is what to look out for as you're doing this to make sure that your stitches are not crossed. So as you go across, you're going to have your 2 knit stitches, and then you're going to have a yarn over stitch, a knit stitch, a yarn over stitch, and then you're going to start with seeing like a knitted stitch and another yarn over stitch. So what you want to do is kind of keep watching for that. So here's a yarn over. That was a yarn over stitch. I'm going to purl that. Here we have a stitch that was knitted because we can see the little purl loop on the back. So we're going to purl that. Our next stitch should look like a yarn over, and it does. And this one is a knit stitch. There's our little purl. It's kind of big, but we're going to purl that. There's our yarn over. Okay, now we have 2 stitches here, perfect, that are like they're a little bit crossed over. And they're usually a little bit tight if they're crossed over. Sometimes it's crossed over like all the way. You know, so we should be seeing a knit stitch here, but we're not seeing that little purl loop back here. So that means that these stitches got crossed. So we want to fix that, and now we can see that little purl loop right there. And now we're going to continue with our purling. So if those stitches get crossed, then your pattern's not going to look right. Okay, there's a yarn over stitch. There's a stitch that had been knitted. Again, we're just purling every single stitch across. Here's another pair that got kind of crossed right here. So we're just gonna kind of loosen those guys up, because you see we should have these yarn overs that are alternating. Here we have another two that got crossed, so I'm just loosening them up with my index finger. Okay, now we slip our marker. We're going to purl the center stitch, slip our marker, and that first stitch that comes up should look like a yarn over stitch, which this does. And again, knit stitch where you can see that little purl loop there, followed by a yarn over stitch, another knit stitch, another yarn over, and so on. So you really want to watch for that as you're going along, because if the stitches are crossed over, and it kind of happens a lot using circular needles, as the stitches go onto the cord, they can get kind of crossed. You want to be watching for that all the time so that your lace pattern will look nice. We're just going to keep purling these. We'll see if we come across another pair of crossed stitches. There's one that was knit, yarn over stitch, a stitch that had been knitted, a stitch that was a yarn over, a stitch that had been knitted, a yarn over stitch. Okay, now these guys look a little crossed, so let's just pull them apart. Knitted stitch, a yarn over stitch, and there's a knitted stitch and a yarn over stitch. Okay, now we got something that looks a little messy here. So let's see what we've got. These guys got crossed completely. So this piece that's on the right is supposed to be over here on the left. So we're just going to pull that over. And now we can see that nice little purl loop in the back right there. And we know we're back in business. These guys are crossed a little bit. Let's just fix those while we're at it. And as you do this, you'll notice this, and it might look kind of tedious and difficult the first time, but really you'll get used to it very quickly, and you'll know what to look for. So you can just watch this over and over again until you kind of get the feel for it, and then just jump in, and you'll get it as you go along. Just go nice and slow. So we're just going to keep purling the rest of these. Until we get to the last two stitches, which we do what? We knit them. So we're going to bring our yarn to the back and knit these last two stitches. And that's that. And now you can see that we're starting to get our lace pattern building. Okay, so those are the first two rows completed of the lace pattern. And we're going to do, so that's 1 and 2, we're going to do 4 more of those. I'm going to do the next 2 with you just so that we can continue to see if there's things to watch out for. So we flip this over and we're going to start again with another right side row, a row 1 of the lace section. And this is our 3rd total row of our lace section. We're going to end up doing 6 of those all together. So we're going to start out by knitting 2. 1, 2, and we're going to do the yarn over, and that first stitch is just a single knit. Need to get out a little bit more yarn here. So we'll finish that knit, and then we do another yarn over, which is basically the stitch that's going to keep us from losing a stitch as we begin our slip, slip, knit. So we're going to go slip, knitwise, slip, knitwise, put our holding needle through those 2 stitches, and then we're going to knit them together. Just kind of loosen that stitch and pull those 2 off, and then we do another yarn over, and we keep doing the same thing. Slip, slip, and this is where bamboo needles are a little nicer because they're less slippery. And then we're going to knit those 2. And another yarn over. Slip, slip. And I guess I kind of always hold on to the last stitch so I don't have other stitches falling off. And then I kind of push these 2 forward to get that holding needle through them. And I ease up on the tension on the yarn so I can pull that through so it's not so tight. And then we do our yarn over. Slip, slip, and knit those 2 together. Yarn over, slip, slip, knit 2 together, and so on. We're going to do this all the way up to the stitch marker where we will do a final yarn over, and then we'll slip the marker, and then we'll knit the center stitch. Okay, so now we're at our last 2 stitches. We slipped them both, and we're going to knit them together, and then we do a yarn over before we slip our marker. We just do a single knit on that middle column, slip our marker, and now we're on the left hand side. We're going to do a yarn over, and now we're just going to start doing the knit 2 together. This side is a little easier than the slip, slip, knit side. So we knit those 2 together, do a yarn over, knit 2 together, do a yarn over, and so on, all the way to the third to last stitch. So we'll fast forward here. Okay, so we are at the third to last stitch, so we do a yarn over and we do a single knit on that third to last stitch. We do another yarn over and we knit the last two. Okay, and now we're going to do, so that was our third row of lace. We're going to do another wrong side row now. Make sure that yarn is over the top of that cord so it doesn't get, I don't know if you can see that, so it doesn't get tangled. And now again, this is a wrong side row and this is a nice and easy row. The only thing that's not easy about it is that you have to watch these stitches that they're not crossed over. These ones all look good. They're not crossed over. They're all in order so far. But they might get crossed as we slide them from the cord onto the needle. And I find actually by slipping them on gently, they're a little bit, just a little bit less likely to get crossed. But it's okay if they do. Just watch out for it. It's very easy to uncross them. So we start again with 2 knits. Knit 2, 1, 2, and then all the rest of these stitches are going to get purled, so we bring our yarn to the front and we want to look for this pattern again where we go a yarn over stitch, a stitch that had been knitted, a yarn over stitch, a stitch that had been knitted, and again you can tell that by watching for this little tiny purl loop right there. A yarn over stitch, a stitch that had been knitted, here's that little purl loop that shows you that, another yarn over, and so on. Okay, so you want to really watch for that as you're going through. And we're just going to purl all these. Okay, so now we are at the stitch marker, and just another purl, stitch marker. And again, we want to be looking for that first stitch that had been a yarn over, and then there should be a knit one and a yarn over one and a knit one and so on. So just keep watching for that as you're doing this, what I call an easy row. It's a wrong side row, and it's easy because it's just a kind of a purl straight across. So here we go, we'll just fast forward through purling across. And I just want to show you here, sometimes it can be tight if they're a little crossed over, so watch for that. Okay, now we're down to our last 2 stitches, and we're going to knit those. So we bring our yarn to the back and knit those 2. Okay, we've just completed row 4 of the lace section. I'm going to complete these last 2 on my own and come back and meet you for the garter section. But let's just take a quick peek at this nice lace that's developing here. It's going to look really pretty. Okay. Okay, so just finished the last 2 rows of the lace section, row 5 and row 6 lace. Now we're going to go back and repeat the garter section for 4 more rows. And once we do that, then you would just go into repeating that same overall pattern continuously until your edge, your top edge, is the length that you desire. And again, you would measure that by measuring from the outer corner to that center, the last stitch in the center column, and then multiplying it by 2, and that'll give you your full length. All right, so but now what we're going to do is we're going to do 4 more rows of the garter section, and so that you can see what that's going to look like. I'm going to, since we've already gone over it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it and come back to you once it's completed. Okay, so we have just finished the 4 garter sections, and I'm going to do the finishing portion of this now. I'm going to assume that we've done as many sections as we needed to make our shawl the size we want. And the way that you can tell is you figure out how long you want the wingspan to be. And you measure that from one end to the center, this center channel, and then just double that, and that'll be the length of your wingspan. So when I made mine, what I did was I did a total of 1, 2, 3 total repeats, and then I also did one more stockinette section and one more garter section on my shawl. So I did kind of 3.5. But for this instructional, I'm going to just finish it off now after a garter row. So for doing the bind off, what we do is we finish on a right side row, which we just finished on a right side row. And the way that you bind off, it's really easy. It's a flexible bind off that allows the piece to not get too tight. And I don't know if it has a name, but this is how it goes. Okay, so for binding off, we're going to knit one, and then we're going to repeat this next part, which is knit one, knit another one, and then you transfer those 2 stitches back to the left needle. Then you knit those 2 together through the back loops and all across until 1 stitch remains, and then we'll pull the yarn through that last loop to complete it. So I'll show you what that looks like. Have our yarn be above our cord. And so we're going to knit this one. And then we're going to knit another one. And we're going to transfer these 2 stitches back to the left needle, but instead of just transferring them completely, since we're going to be knitting through the back loop anyways, our working needle is already in the back loop, so we're just going to knit those 2 together. And now I have 1 loop on my working stitch, on my working needle. Now we're going to knit another one, and we're going to transfer to the holding needle, and again our working needle is already through that back loop, so we're going to leave it like that and knit those 2 together and slide those off. And you can see we're starting to finish off the project. So we're going to go to the next one, knit, and we stick our holding needle through the front of those 2, wrap the yarn around the back and knit those 2 together and slide those 2 off. We're just going to continue with that across, knit, and then transfer to the holding needle, and then knit through the back loop those 2 together. So we'll just go ahead and keep doing that. We'll fast forward through this for you. We'll finish. I'll come back to you as soon as this is done. Okay, so we have just actually 3 stitches left, so we're going to finish these up with a knit, and then knit those 2 through the back loop, knit, transfer to the holding needle, knit those 2 together through the back loop, and the last one. Knit those 2 together through the back loop, and now we have just 1 loop, and we're going to cut the yarn. And what we're going to do here is pull. We're going to put the yarn through. I'm going to put the yarn through this last loop, this last stitch. Okay, so we have just actually 3 stitches left, so we're going to finish these up with a knit, and then knit those 2 through the back loop, knit, transfer to the holding needle, knit those 2 together through the back loop, and the last one. Knit those 2 together through the back loop, and now we have just 1 loop, and we're going to cut the yarn. And what we're going to do here is pull. We're going to put the yarn through. I'm going to put the yarn through this last loop, this last stitch. I'm just going to pull it gently, nice and tight, and then that end can be weaved in, or if it's tight enough you can probably even cut it. So let's take a look at how this looks. And this is a mini version of what your shawl will look like. We have our, actually, let's see, this is the wrong side. Let me turn it over. Okay, so here we can see our stockinette section. You can see our row of garter. You can see our lace section. And then another section of garter here, and then the bind off row. And it makes a really, really pretty shawl. Any of the shawl in a ball colors would be nice with this pattern as they change. And you could add tassels, you could add fringe, or you could add a tassel here and a tassel on each corner end, or I left mine just as is, and you can wear it in the front, wear it in the back, you can wrap it around like a scarf. Because it is so lightweight, you can bunch it up and just wear it like a scarf, and it looks really great with, you know, like a light color underneath, so you can really see the lace when you wear it. So anyhow, I hope that you will really enjoy your creation, And I hope that you will send me a picture of your shawl, and you can send that in to me on either my website, which is lightandjoydesigns.com/contact. You can send me, I believe you can send me an image there. You can also post one onto my Facebook page. Just search for Light and Joy Designs. Or you can post it on Ravelry under the pattern. You can link to the pattern with your pictures. So either way, I really look forward to seeing what you create. And this pattern you could use with any kind of yarn. You could even do this with a thicker yarn. You could do it with smaller needles to make the stitches tighter, and it would still be really cool. So thank you for watching. I look forward to hearing from you. I thank you if you purchased the printable version of the pattern, and I thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks again. Bye-bye now. I'm just going to pull it gently, nice and tight, and then that end can be weaved in, or if it's tight enough you can probably even cut it. So let's take a look at how this looks. And this is a mini version of what your shawl will look like. We have our, actually, let's see, this is the wrong side. Let me turn it over. Okay, so here we can see our stockinette section. You can see our row of garter. You can see our lace section, and then another section of garter here, and then the bind off row. And it makes a really, really pretty shawl. Any of the shawl in a ball colors would be nice with this pattern as they change. And you could add tassels, you could add fringe, or you could add a tassel here and a tassel on each corner end, or I left mine just as is, and you can wear it in the front, wear it in the back, you can wrap it around like a scarf. Because it is so lightweight, you can bunch it up and just wear it like a scarf. And it looks really great with, like a light color underneath, so you can really see the lace when you wear it. So anyhow, I hope that you will really enjoy your creation, and I hope that you will send me a picture of your shawl, and you can send that in to me on either my website, which is lightandjoydesigns.com/contact. You can send me, I believe you can send me an image there. You can also post one onto my Facebook page. Just search for Light and Joy Designs. Or you can post it on Ravelry under the pattern. You can link to the pattern with your pictures. So either way, I really look forward to seeing what you create. And this pattern you could use with any kind of yarn. You could even do this with a thicker yarn. You could do it with smaller needles to make the stitches tighter, and it would still be really cool. So thank you for watching. I look forward to hearing from you. I thank you if you purchased the printable version of the pattern, and I thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.
Bye.